Today I'd like to chat with you about resisting the myth of professionalism and how that myth is rooted in and perpetuates racism and misogyny. Or, to put it another way, I'll be explaining to you why I'm presenting a TEDx talk in a gray hoodie with gray hair, no makeup, and no fancy bookshelves behind me. My resistance to the myth of professionalism began long before casual Fridays or ping pong tables in co-working spaces, and long before a pandemic made children interrupting Zoom meetings not only understandable and acceptable, but sometimes even welcome. My resistance began in childhood, and then I struggled to quash it and buy into the myth until I reached a point of no return. You see, way back when I was in junior high, I heard an older, cooler guy say, "I don't know why all the girls wear makeup. If people don't like you with your natural beauty, forget them." His remarks stuck with me. And despite occasionally wearing makeup and trying to tame my frizzy hair in high school, I totally agreed with him deep down. Through the decades, life has presented new lessons for me to more clearly understand the detrimental nature of appearing and acting professional, and why it's absolutely critical that we name it, confront it, and resist it. By my 18th birthday, the question of wearing makeup and how to do my hair was taken away from me. It was solved for me because I entered a convent and I wore a habit and a veil. And of course, I wasn't allowed to wear makeup. I thought I had found the ultimate resistance to the objectification of women. Yet, I received immediate authority. I was 18, had just graduated high school, and had just aged out of receiving welfare through my mother. And yet, somehow, I was accepted and respected because of the clothes I wore. My habit through the years was appropriate anywhere. Sometimes I got strange looks if I was riding my bike or playing basketball or hanging out on the beach. But no one ever questioned whether or not I was professional. No one ever accused me of being unprofessional, and they never questioned my credentials, even when I didn't have them. Well, at 31, I left the convent and I began life as a young single woman, and I was amazed at how many people were concerned about whether or not I knew how to wear makeup and what clothes that I should choose to wear. One of my first attempts to find a job after not wearing a habit was at a temporary agency here in Chicago. I looked through my closet, which was very slim, a few pairs of pants, a few shirts, and a floral skirt that I had picked up at the secondhand store. You see, I hadn't purchased clothes since 1981, and it was 1994. I had my Birkenstock style sandals that I'd carried with me for years. So up I went in the elevator to the front desk, and the woman seemed almost afraid to shake my hand. She said, somewhat with disdain, "We'll begin with the tests, but you do realize you need professional attire, right?" Well, I looked around the room and I realized everyone was wearing tight little blue or black mini skirt suits, nylons, and high heels. I guess this was their habit. But during my final year in the convent, I had made a conscious decision to never wear nylons again. It was in solidarity with the poor and in resisting the objectification of women. And I'd gotten my Birkenstock style sandals to commit to my simplicity. So here I was, surrounded by professionalism, and I wondered if I could ever survive, and if I even wanted to. But I said, I just moved. I stumbled over my words, and then I added a little white lie. My clothes haven't arrived yet. They should be here tomorrow. Well, you see, I never did get that job. Despite acing all the tests that day, they never called me back. I have a bachelor's degree, a teaching credential. I'd been the department chair for a 14-person English department at a secondary school in Hong Kong. I spoke Mandarin and Cantonese fluently. I taught myself how to type in Chinese in a DOS computer system. I had run institutional kitchens for years in my early convent days, and I had spoken before thousands. But somehow, because of what I was wearing, I never got called back. It wasn't important what I knew, what I could do, or what I had to offer. So you may now get why I'm standing here with gray hair and no makeup. I'm resisting misogyny. But I didn't get here all at once. I spent years as a teacher wearing casual dress, which was far more acceptable. And then when I transitioned into an administrative role in 2010, I played the part. I dyed my hair. I purchased business suits. I wore makeup and high heels. Fortunately, nylons had gone out of style. But I tried to be professional, and I pulled it off. It wasn't until I realized that professionalism perpetuated and actually disguised racism that I finally knew I'd hit a point of no return. One of my earliest memories of my husband is from when we chaperoned a high school trip to the zoo, and we were walking along the pathway, and all of a sudden a little 3 or 4-year-old child ran up, grabbed my husband's leg, and cried, "I lost my mommy. Can you help me?" It was a real feel-good moment. But my husband's a large Black man, and I've seen people cross the street, clutch their purse, lock their doors when they see him. But this little girl instinctively knew he was safe and would help her. She wasn't looking for professionalism. In our 25 years of marriage, I've witnessed racism by association, up close and personal. I've seen the shock on a police officer's face after pulling my husband over and seeing me in the passenger seat. I've experienced being overlooked, made to wait, ignored, seated in the worst location in restaurants, not receiving our food in a timely manner, as if we didn't exist or didn't have a right to be there. I've witnessed the assumption that my husband or my sons were the help in a restaurant or hotel and at conferences. And I've moved across the country with 3 children, no home, and no job lined up when my husband was refused a promotion that he rightly earned after 7 years because the administrator said he'd be better for the job in a more urban setting. Despite the fact that he has a doctorate and he's smarter, kinder, wiser, and more compassionate and better educated than most people I know, He's somehow not seen as professional enough by too many people. My son, who was a nationally recognized debate champion, as a senior in high school at the age of 14, was told he needed to look more like Colin Powell and less like Jimi Hendrix. He's walked down the street in a $400 tailored suit on his way to work, only to be stopped and asked what he was doing in this neighborhood. My other son, who everybody loves with a big afro and an even bigger smile, who's an EMT and studying to be a nurse, and who would give you the coat off of his back, can't leave the house without his ID. He can't drive with a broken taillight for fear of being stopped, and even worse. You see, it doesn't matter how professional they are, how well behaved, how well educated, how well dressed. Mark Zuckerberg can dress in blue jeans and a t-shirt wherever he goes, and no one questions it. But when my husband and sons, and so many other Black men and women, are dressed in tailored suits, waiting to give a keynote speech, facilitate a workshop, preside over a prayer meeting, time and again, others approach them as hired help. At the hospital where my husband's the chaplain, people often think he's part of the security team. So, in 2014, I was a president at high school where the majority of students were Black or Latino. While many of the students lived with the constant danger of violence or their parents being deported, the teachers insisted that the students walk silently in the hallways with their hands at their sides and their shirts tucked in. They spent hours making sure everyone's shirt was tucked in. Young ladies were told they looked like Mickey Mouse or their hairstyles were distracting. Teachers insisted on the 5 Ps. Dress professionally, arrive prepared, be prompt, be proactive, and be polite. But did these things really matter? Over that summer, the country had reacted to the murders of Eric Garner and Michael Brown, 2 unarmed Black men who'd been killed by the police. And then, on Monday, November 24th, I pulled into the parking lot at the high school, turned off the car, stared at the building, and said to myself, what the heck am I doing here? I'd learned just the night before that 12-year-old Tamir Rice had been gunned down by a police officer in Cleveland, Ohio, while playing in a park. Tamir Rice was playing in a park. He wasn't in a gang. He wasn't in a bad neighborhood. And he was threatening no one. He was a child. Would a tucked-in shirt have protected Tamir? How could I continue to enforce asinine rules when half of the students feared death for walking or driving while Black, and the other half feared their mothers or fathers would be deported and they'd never see them again? I just couldn't help but think, what am I doing? I'd purchased my gray hoodie shortly after February 26, 2012, the night Trayvon Martin was shot and killed while walking home in Florida because someone said he didn't belong in the neighborhood. I wore my gray hoodie whenever possible. But by 2015, I began to ask myself, what does whenever possible mean? Why should I be afforded an opportunity to dress up, look nice, and be respected because of the clothes I wear when men and women of color across the country cannot? We must reject the concept of making a good impression, of appearing and acting professional. We must reject the sentiment of Coco Chanel, who once said, dress shabbily and they remember the dress, dress impeccably and they remember the woman. We must reject Academy Award winner Edith Head, who said, You can have anything you want in life if you dress for it. We must reject the notion that if we could only dress better, we'd achieve all of our dreams. Because you see, that might be true for white people. They can dress, and how they dress could make all the difference in the world. But for a person of color, this is simply not true. To my white audience, I ask, are we willing to endure being misunderstood because we don't play the game or buy into the agenda? Are we willing to be less than professional to experience the inconvenience that so many others are subjected to on a daily basis? Are we ready to miss out on an opportunity for professional advancement, to stand up to that myth? And if we're in a position of power, are we willing to look beneath the surface and challenge our own bias? Are we ready to ignore the preconceived notions of professionalism? Do our expectations of professionalism deprive someone who may actually be the perfect person for a position because of some non-professional appearance or attitude or action? Do we make assumptions about a candidate's fit because of their clothing, hairstyle, tattoos, piercings, language patterns, or body language without first learning something about them? What are the subtle ways that we allow myths of professionalism to get in the way of true progress? What a different world we might live in if we let go of that myth of needing to be professional and looked more carefully at what everyone brings to the table. How often have we denied the world a person of brilliance and genius because of misogyny and racism in the name of professionalism? We must be willing to take the chance, to be ready and willing to resist. So I'll leave you with this question. Are you willing to show up in a gray hoodie or to hire someone who does?